be trapped inside Gaza, at least a third of whom are believed to be dead. Let's move to this. The Centre for Development and Enterprise has called for a major overhaul of South Africa's industrial policies. It emphasises the need to shift from protectionism to a more export-focused strategy. In its latest report from the CDE, it highlights the failures of the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition in achieving economic re-industrialization. To discuss this further, we are joined by Executive Director Ann Bernstein. Thank you so much for your time this evening, Ann. We do appreciate it. Why do you believe that South Africa's industrial policies require an overhaul?
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. Good evening. South Africa's manufacturing performance has been woeful. Manufacturing has declined as a percentage of GDP and as an employer. We're down to 13% of GDP. And we have declined much faster and further than many other countries, and we're one of very few countries where the number of people employed in manufacturing has declined as well. The number of exporting firms has been falling. So instead of growing our economy, we're shrinking it. And there are many factors that are causing our economic challenges, but one of them is, in our view, that the DTIC's key policies have focused on protecting South African firms rather than getting the costs of doing business in South Africa much lower and much more competitive, and focusing on exports. This is the only way a small economy like ours can really grow at the level that we need for South Africa. And we have to bring down the costs of doing business, and we need to change our policies. We are focusing too much on protecting the firms that we have, rather than putting all our attention, or most of our attention, on how do we get the firms we don't yet have. So it's a very different approach, and we're not alone in calling for a review of our industrial policy. In September, NEDLAC, government, big business and labour, said that South Africa needs a complete overhaul of its industrial and trade policies, and we agree with them. The President has said we should reassess the master plans, key component of our industrial strategy. So we agree with all of those people, and we're taking it further and trying to spell out the reforms that are required to get a much more competitive economy and a growing economy.
I want us to shift focus to the manufacturing sector and its contribution to GDP and employment from 1960 to 2023. And the reason why we're choosing those specific years, and is probably because of the massive change that we have seen, especially in the manufacturing sector, and how previously it contributed to GDP and employment, and that has significantly changed, hasn't it?
Well, manufacturing is a very important way in which countries develop, and there are all sorts of positive spin-offs. Now, manufacturing is declining globally, but we're a small player. So moving from 20% of our GDP from 1960 to 2023, we dropped. Manufacturing was 20% of our economy or GDP, and now it's at 13%. And we've lost jobs, and it's difficult to get those jobs back. So we're saying we have to expand our manufacturing sector as fast as we can, and we have to aim at least to do as well as peer economies in the rest of the world instead of being a laggard.
Let's speak about the reforms that you wish to see in the tariff system.
Well, we want three kinds of reforms in our tariff system. The first is to immediately eliminate all tariffs on goods that are not made by South African firms. This seems to us to be a no-brainer. We're not saying the rest of the tariff system has to be changed tomorrow, but we are saying that the direction of change is very clear. We need to review tariffs much more frequently and build in sunset clauses. Some of our tariffs were introduced 20 years ago or more. We're not even sure that the companies that asked for them still exist. So decisions to extend or amend existing tariffs must consider the impact of these tariffs on prices faced both by consumers and downstream users of the protected goods. So we have to look at all the costs. The third component is we need to assess tariff requests by giving weight to all the costs of protection, not just to the particular company trying to compete with an international product, but what does that mean for the rest of the economy, for the users of that product in South Africa? So there are a number of issues that need to be changed here, some that can be done immediately, others that will take some more time. You have to give people warning, but we have to change our tariff system.
And then just lastly, and perhaps in closing, Anne, I'm wondering what your views are in terms of the role that the DTIC should be playing, especially in promoting South African businesses and our own markets.
We're arguing that the DTIC should play a much more active role on a bigger stage. They should stop trying to micromanage the firms that we have and the sectors that we have. Their focus should be on creating a better environment in which to do business in South Africa, and that could keep them busy for quite a while. They need to work closely with other cabinet ministers and departments and the economic cluster at the top of government, and they need to work with local governments. And they should seek to shape the debate to ensure that other departments do everything required to promote the expansion of business. And lastly, we're saying the DTIC should be the advocate for business and competitive markets in South Africa, not just inside government, but in the wider society as well.
Okay, thank you so much for your insights and highlighting this very important issue. We do appreciate your time. That was the Centre for Development and Enterprise Executive Director, Ann Bernstein. Now, good